We'll have a panel discussion. While the experts are coming up here, I just want to remind you again of the session feedback in the app. Go into the session, throw some stars in there and some feedback. We can improve on, or if you like it, obviously. So that is great. So yeah, please welcome the panel. Andy,
thank you, Harold.
The floor is yours. I'll sit over here to be out of the way, and I try to be as smart.
Just want to make sure I've got my timer up so that we're keeping everybody at time. So, our second panel discussion, and we have understanding the ESG regulatory environment and how procurement can contribute. And I have to say, ich nicht sprechen Deutsch, but I've learned a new word today. Lieferkettennachhaltigkeitsgesetz. How's my pronunciation? Is that okay? What I want to do, I just want to, before we kick off properly, ESG is very much the flavor of the month at the moment. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody wants to get involved. Everybody's playing the game, if you like. And I have to admit that as a manufacturing guy, with some experience of supply chain, if you go back 10 years, ESG meant absolutely nothing to me. So let's go back 5 years. Say we'll go pre-COVID. 2018, 2019, by a show of hands, how many people had actually heard of ESG? 1, 2, 3. What, 15% of the audience? So come back 3 years, just as we were starting COVID. Who'd heard of ESG then? Yeah, a few more. But you see, hopefully what I'm getting to, it's still, I won't say novel, but it's certainly new to people. So let's start. So guys, if you just want to quickly just introduce yourselves, take a minute. Who are you? What's your job title? Who do you work for? And we'll go from there. You turn me off. Who wants to start? Dario?
No, it's on. It's on. Yeah, that's good. Hi everybody. My name is Dario Kulic, and I'm coming from Bayer Animal Health, and worked also the last 3 years in this industry and stabilized P2P and procurement from the Bayer integration into Elanco. And yeah, that's about me.
Hi there, I'm Peter Spillman. I worked in procurement for my last big job for 10 years for a company called Electrorent. Unfortunately, the slide is slightly wrong. I now work for a global consultancy business on sustainability.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Desiree. I will not pronounce my last name. It's too complicated and will not remember. I'm leading the procurement organization and the sustainable sourcing strategy for the Hero Group, which is a family-owned company, Swiss-based, which is operating globally, and the major part of our revenue is coming from baby food, and the rest is what we like to call healthy snack.
And okay. My name is Jurnd. I've seen a few of you yesterday already. The director of procurement for Lunch Garden. Since we're a relatively small company, I tend to wear multiple caps. So I do quality, supply chain procurement, and everything around carbon emissions reporting, and hopefully improvement as well, which is our main focus from an ESG perspective.
Okay, thanks. Yep. Okay. Oh, sorry, just deafened somebody at the back there. So on the basis that it's all, well, some of it's new to us, ESG. What's ESG? What do you guys understand by ESG?
Yeah, hi. I want to start off by just giving you some feedback from what I've learned in the last couple of days. So in your session, when we talked about sustainability, what was clear was that it was in everybody's mindset. For every presentation we've had since I've been here, the words ESG have been mentioned. So it's on everybody's radar, but by your analysis yesterday, which was very interesting, the level of knowledge, training, external advice is very poor. And I think part of the reason is that when people think about ESG, they think about it as something they must do. So the why is about we're doing it. Why are we doing it? Because there's legislation, we have to. That, in my view, is totally the wrong mentality. So the way I think about it is to define it not in terms of the environmental and social things, but in terms of companies having what we call a triple bottom line. And what that means is instead of reporting financial things, they're also looking at their environmental footprint, their social behaviour, and they see that not as something distinct, but something about how the whole company operates. It's an integrated approach. So that's my definition.
Desiree?
Maybe if I place myself as a pure procurement professional, I would say that ESG is a new business requirement who comes on top with a lot of good intention to tell you not what to do, but how to do business. And that you have fully to integrate because it's a future license to operate. So this is how I take it.
Yeah, maybe to add on the future license to operate as well in terms of company valuation. For us, it's sort of a public secret that we probably will be sold in the next few years to a new shareholder. And it is clear that without any ESG agenda, your valuation just goes down. Maybe something to add on top is like everybody knows what the acronym stands for, but how to translate that towards your own company is for me the most important thing. My previous employer, I had the pleasure to work for Recticel for a few years. They're a company who take petrochemicals, transform them into insulation panels and other derivatives of it. But for them, they were a net negative emission. So they had negative CO2 emissions on their entire scope. Why? Because the insulation panels that they produce take out so much CO2 out of the houses that they're being installed in, that as a petrochemical transformation company, let's put it like that, they're actually net negative. So they shouldn't focus too much on the environmental part, but they did have their issues on sourcing in China, being producing in China, producing in India, and all the things that come around with that. So they were much more focused on that. So it's a big term, but you should always look at it from your own company perspective, I think.
Yes, so I will avoid to repeat anything what has been said already. So I agree to my colleagues here, and for me there's one thing, it starts always with the intention. So with the intention, like with everything in life, so what you intend to do with the things, so what is actually the intention behind ESG? So I know ESG actually under different names, because I'm a child of the automotive industry, and in the automotive industry you're doing this already actually since, I don't know, decades. Probably, yeah, decades. So I've worked last time 2016 to, yeah. So I guess 2 decades. So, and the thing is here, at that time it was not, let's say, governmentally ruled and a must to submit it, but actually from the company perspective, they wanted it. They wanted to see actually from their suppliers. And in automotive, you can have a supplier and he has 5 tiers below. So when you go this whole line down, then you want to know where this stuff comes from. Your suppliers are buying, and the same with mines, for example. I heard yesterday a story with Tesla. They have, I think, production sites for the batteries in Africa, so nearby the mines actually, and that's, yeah, for me then a bit, it's strange, yeah. So that companies doing this, and the thing is, the information actually. Is this being exposed? It's not. Is the data actually correct, which is submitted? Who's validating all this data? So again, the intent behind this is good. If you want to save the environment, if you want to avoid child work and sourcing from critical countries and so on. But just to submit it for the regulation, so this is not the right intent in my perspective.
Great, thanks for that, guys. So I think regulation is obviously driving the whole ESG movement, but and I think we kind of get the envelope of what ESG means, but I think, as I said to some of you, if you ask 2 lawyers about something, you get 3 opinions. So everybody sort of moves around, and where does ESG start, where does it finish? But I think the most important thing is the why. So Peter, do you want to expand a little bit on the why people are doing it, other than regulation,
yes,
as well as regulation?
I think I'm going to ask the opposite question to start off with. Does anybody here have a company with an unsustainability policy? You know, it shouldn't really need to be asked. You know, business is about continuance and growth, and you can't have that unless you have a sustainability policy. What I'm going to do briefly, though, is to sort of address the elephant in the room, and that is, we're all here for business, so probably eco-zealots, eco-warriors aren't really our thing. But at the same time, we have to realise that there is an underlying issue for the planet. And if we ignore that and just get on with complying with legislation, we're probably missing an important point. So I want to give one hopefully relevant way of looking at it that will touch you. So I don't know, has anybody here heard of Earth Overshoot Day? Can you put your hand up if you're familiar with that concept? So a few people, I'd ask you to Google it. So what Earth Overshoot Day does, it looks at each country and said if the whole world used the world's resources the same way as that country does, what day of the year would those resources be used up? Okay, so I'm going to give you some of your, hopefully, World Overshoot Days. So anybody here from France? One. Your Overshoot Day is May the 5th. Anyone here from Germany? Yeah, a lot of people from Germany. May the 4th. Now, you might think that's pretty bad because that's less than half a year, but I'm doing them in reverse order here. Anybody from the Netherlands? April the 26th. Anybody here from Kuwait? I know there is. I spoke to someone yesterday. Kuwait, perhaps not here today. March the 26th. The UK, March the 26th. The worst offender I had, and I know there's somebody here, I won't ask them to put their hand up, Luxembourg. Yeah, so Luxembourg, Valentine's Day, February the 14th. Okay. Now, another way of looking at Earth Overshoot Day is, say your date is, let's take the UK and be non-contentious because I'm obviously from the UK. So if you take the UK date and then you say, well, how many of the Earth's resources am I using within a whole year? So for the UK, it's about 4.8. So we need 4.8 Earths if everybody was going to operate like the UK. So does that give you some kind of perspective as to why actually the underlying issue, as well as all the regulations we apply to, is important? I hope so. And I think it's interesting because looking at some of the things that have been said, so Gulsa mentioned about Silbelco adopting an environmental strategy long before the legislation required it. Now, why did they do that? Because it was a much harder thing to do. The why when you've got a law to obey is easy. The why when you don't is much harder. And getting your suppliers and employees to address it with you is critically important. I'm going to give you some whys other than the legislation. So one of the whys is getting money. A lot of investment now is geared to green performance. Getting employees. If you read PwC's reports on Gen Zs and millennials, 50% of them want to work for environmentally sustainable businesses. So if you're not one of those, you could miss out on some of the best talent. And then, of course, there is the legislation, which we're here to discuss. So I'll give you a recent example from the legislation. 2 days ago, the biggest fine ever for greenwashing. A German company, a subsidiary of Deutsche Bank, $19 million. Okay, that's a pretty good reason. $19 million. I've spoken for too long, so I'll hand over to my colleagues. But I hope that gives you some insight.
Wow. Okay, thanks for that, Peter. Comprehensive, as ever. Dario, anything to add? You grabbed the mic there.
Yes, well, I agree, and I would say, and on most of the terms, I'm just a bit skeptical when it comes again to the data. So I have yet not seen any concept or proof of concept which is really ensuring to me and guaranteeing me, well, this data is all correct. Oh, we have been validating. So who validated it? The government? Did somebody validate it? Or is it just flowing through into the reports and closing and actually your obligation to do year by year? So I'm skeptical about this. The other thing a bit, talents. Yeah, I guess there are people today who are looking after sustainable ESG compliant, let's call them ESG compliant companies, maybe, yeah, possible, but I don't think it's the majority. So still I think there's enough, I would say, clever people in this world who also understand that this is a lot about data crunching and as my colleague he said, finance. Yeah? So it's it's a big industry now. It's a big business behind, and we see this also everywhere. So, and companies need this help, and companies are getting then also this help. And there are enough, let's say, consultancies and providers who can help here. But again, the truth behind this, it's the important thing, and here I'm still skeptical.
Anything to add?
Maybe where in the food industry, you do it because it's a question of survival from both sides, from a human being and from a business perspective. I think as a procurement in a food industry, you're fully exposed against the vulnerability, against the weather, the pollution, especially when you're in a baby food. When you're in a baby food, you know you're really close to what's in your nutriment, your food. So there is a moment where from a business perspective, our consumer will become more and more and more intelligent. With an iPhone, they will know what's in your food and where it's coming from. So from a business perspective, in the food industry, if you don't focus on ESG, you will lose. You will lose. And then the second aspect is also the talent. I fully agree. I think every time I hire someone today that talk to me, I want to, do you do sustainability? It's just because in my title, there is also sustainable sourcing. This is what I want to do, procurement. So from a business perspective, it's very important. And from a human perspective, I think I don't need to comment that's one element for me, which is really important also for the food industry, is that the waste, because we talk about people, how many people we are in, but in the food industry, if you don't have this regulation also to manage the waste, because almost 30% of what you produce go to the bin, you have somehow to do some effort. And I agree, data is important to know where you stand, the validity of the data, the quality of the data, I agree with challenge, but I think what's important is the effort, and just to change how we operate to go into the right direction. The baseline, the data, I'm challenging them, I agree, but at least we need to do the effort to the right direction.
Okay,
Intent,
thanks
yes,
for that.
that's right, you're right.
Sure. You want anything to add?
Yeah,
to add?
I want to make it
We'll
a
move
bit
on
more
little bit.
somber even. We're talking about survival here, but I'm also just seeing what for us is really a challenge is that we see the yields of the crops going down. And it's pretty alarming in terms of the quality of food that we're getting in. We had to source mussels. We had to source carrots at a certain point. Our supplier had to go to Iran, almost to get carrots in. I didn't even know they were producing them there. But anyway, so just to give you an idea, that it's just we have to. We don't have any choice anymore. The parts in the world that are developing rapidly, their overshoot day is also coming closer towards ours, and it's just not feasible anymore to make it happen. So it's really about survival, unfortunately, and not only for our companies, but also just in general as a human for humanity. And it's a bit more somber, as I said before, but it is the case.
So maybe
Okay.
ESG is bringing us together more.
Sure. So let's try and lighten the mood a little bit. So how can procurement contribute? How can procurement help us all out of this mess?
Maybe I think we had a great example with Sibelco. I think procurement needs to embed into the way they operate all these GHG or all the stage from the category development, from the source to contract. This is a new way to operate. This is a new way to operate. And then for me, the second element, it's about supplier engagement. We are the one managing a relationship. We know our supplier. And this is where really procurement is I believe they are the best place to engage our suppliers in any way, contract, supplier, but also in relationship. Because this is what we see, for example, we work with farmer. You don't engage farmer with a contract, okay? It's a complete different relationship. You try to find another way to engage them. Today is all about money because they don't make a lot of money, but they're also very, very, very keen to learn what they can do to help too. So that's one way. And the third for me, it's about performance management. I think we have the data. We are a function. We are really driven by a strong KPI. We need to make sure that the KPI visible, showing that we're moving in the right direction. That's the three elements that procurement from my side.
Okay.
Well, maybe just to add on top is if we look at the emissions reporting that we all have to do within the next year or 2 years to come, we all know scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. But if you really look at it, basically, unless you are a commodity producer and you really start from a raw material that is coming from the earth, if you really look at it, everything in scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 is things that you buy. For us, scope 3 is 88% roughly of our CO2 emissions, but all the other things as well, it's just things that we buy. When you buy energy, you make a decision if you buy it gray or green. When you put your company, or when you put your people in a company car, you decided on which company car they can select. All of those things are things that we, as a procurement professional, actually have an influence over. And on top of that, we actually have a fantastic skill set to manage these things, because if it's spend or CO2 emissions, the skills are 100% transferable. So it is something that we can pull towards ourselves, and first of all, also make the procurement function a bit more visual, I would say. And I'm thinking on writing like an article about it, on saying, okay, how can we assure a spot on the board? But that's actually my belief is that it's by taking this and actually transferring our skills that we have today also on these type of problems.
Yeah, so I think procurement here is definitely most interested to have actually no transactional activities anymore. In this, not only in this topic, actually in all topics at all. So and here the point is, I think procurement can help here to drive forward this digitalization of ESG, for example, because ESG for me is two components. The one component is the intent, the mission. So what is your mission? What is your story? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to be good? Why do you want to be bad? So this kind of question. The other thing is purely management of data and actually project management. So as my colleagues also said, onboarding of the supplier, engaging the suppliers. Who's making the speech in front of 500 suppliers, explaining all of them what's going to happen? So from a strategic perspective, from a business partnering perspective. So and here again, going this way, procurement will then also reach its goal, to become a valued only sourcing organization, which is business partnering and not hammering all the day stuff into the system. So and being also responsible for financial questions on supplier invoices, on their payments, etc., etc. So I think here definitely procurement can help and should. I mean, procurement should take now this opportunity and drive.
Yeah, I see procurement's role as being evangelists. And the reason I say that is because we mentioned about scope 1, 2 and 3. For nearly all companies, scope 3, the external supply, is the biggest area. So if we don't address that, that's a procurement role to address that. If we don't address that, we're not addressing the biggest problem. The other factor is that for most businesses, their suppliers are smaller businesses. So a lot of businesses have a large number of small suppliers. And for small suppliers, sometimes the direct regulation doesn't apply, and the difficulty in internal resources they have to have good sustainability ESG policies, it's much harder. So that's why the purchasing function has got to also be an enabling function. You know, really, if we want suppliers that have our kind of ethos and policies, we have to offer the carrot, not the stick, or it's not going to happen. And I think also, when you look at the legislation, it's also crucial. So we talked about the German Supply Chain Due Diligence, a bit of a mouthful, that act. And we had Miriam talking to us earlier about Tier N suppliers. Well, the Act applies to your Tier N suppliers. So it's not just your direct suppliers. So if you don't manage that, if you're a German company, or if you're a non-German supplier to a German company to whom the legislation applies, then you need to be part of the rules. Otherwise, you're breaking the rules. So that's why I think this notion of Tier N is really important.
Okay, thanks for that, guys. Comprehensive. So I think certainly, I suppose some of the sort of ESG stuff is a lot about data. So there must be a massive market for AI in it. So how can AI help us?
So AI, wonderful. So AI can hear wonderful, not just AI, I would say even digitalized technology. So it's not always only AI, but if you take chatbots, for example, going further, so not just chatbots, AI-powered chatbots, which can action all the things and which can streamline also communication between suppliers and the company. So having two bots, external, internal, making not just communication easier, submission of the forms, the extraction of the data out of these forms, putting it in a compiled file, in a list, making directly also an automatic report out of it. So all these kind of things, there are, if a human being is doing it, it's non-value added actually. The result is value added, yeah, but the way to coming to this result, so all this data crunching, all this compiling, listing, blah, 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 so this is not value added, and here I think AI will make a wonderful job if properly implemented, definitely. It should also be, so we as humans shouldn't do this type of work anymore. And you said it also, you both, yeah? We are in a survival mode now. Yeah? So if you want to survive, you should utilize all your time you have for your survival, for rescuing maybe the planet, yeah? Or for whatever, but not for meaningless things like crunching data and then putting them into files. Yeah? So I think we are already ahead of this time.
I think the amount. We on? Yeah. I think the amount of data we have at the moment is going to make it impossible for humans to do it alone.
I wouldn't say impossible, but I would say it's a Sisyphus work. Yeah? It's a Sisyphus work. You will do it round the clock, yeah? all the time, and this doesn't work. No.
And what I can share is we had recently a workshop around how we can get value out of AI within the team from immediately something short term. And we had 3 areas, and I say, will help us to spend more time doing sustainability. The first area was very interesting. It was about having a help desk for the organization on procurement data. Because you know how much time you spend and say, hey, who is our biggest supplier? Say, we could have an internal AI who can answer all these type of questions that we can spend time somewhere else. That was the first area. The second area was about innovation, how we can have an AI who's able to track our challenges, like reducing energy, optimizing
getting young
transport.
people on board.
People on board.
People especially, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's all this innovation where, I mean, you take time to travel, to look at internet. That's the second element. And the third element was about contract management that we believe, because managing a database on contract and where you stand and everything, I think this is an immediate solution that AI can offer. I think there is a big world, but today, having this acceleration of automation for contract information for stakeholder and getting input on innovation, that was the 3 area where we believe AI will help us to spend more time in focusing and engaging supplier, thinking about a long-term strategy, and delivering this double, because I'm reporting in Swiss francs, so we have this double C, saving in CO2 and saving in CHF, so Swiss francs. So that's the new word in our procurement, this double C saving. Yeah.
See, remember where you heard it first. So thanks, guys. That's been interesting. We do have some time for questions. Anybody with their hands up? I see Tom. Get a mic to Tom. Oh, sorry. We have time, don't worry.
Thank you. I was interested, I think it was Peter who said the words, we should be evangelists, and I don't disagree with that. The struggle I have is that ultimately the challenges we have with ESG are ultimately, it's an output. The problems we face today are an output of a capitalist society. So a lot of the time we're dealing in businesses which are there to make money, and are therefore driving some of the problems. I'm thinking of people who are head of procurement in something like a mining company or airlines. So how do we reconcile that moral dilemma?
Well, shall I answer first, seeing it's the point that I made? You know, we've had lots of doom and gloom. I think we need a bit of upbeat here. The question why has been a big feature of this summit so far. And, you know, businesses are there because problems are there. You know, what we do every day is go in and try and get our business to address some of the most difficult problems, because that's how we add value and make money. So I think this is just another case in point, and I'm actually a real optimist about the potential to do that. And I think, to answer your question, if you look at reports on the top ESG performers, if you look at McKinsey reports and things like that, they're also top EBITDA performers. There is a correlation. It's not that you're trading one against the others. So there are big companies that have found a win-win solution. If you look at, for example, you know, Patagonia, who do sustainable clothing, you know, they've changed their business, but they will repair your clothes for free. Well, surely that's going to stop people buying new clothes, you know, so that seems counterintuitive in some way. But what they've done is embodied it in their business model, so they've got people who pay a premium for a lifelong garment. It's a different strategy, and that's what business has to do, is to think outside the box. The way we've been doing things for so long is no longer sustainable, if you'll pardon the pun. We have to think about new business models.
Okay.
Yeah.
Golsa? Oh.
Hello.
Running.
Thank you for your enthusiasm, encouraging us in working in ESG. But I think everybody agrees that it's important, after all these speeches and so on. But I need your help. Well, thinking about implementing ESG activities and things within my supply base, I was thinking about the resources needed, as Desiree has said. Okay, we have to invest in time, maybe in money, maybe, as others said, maybe we have to remove some supplier, not compliance, things like that. And then I need from you 3 or 4 facts or reasons, but not emotional, let us say, romantic, but real facts in business, so I can convince my CEO to implement ESG in my company.
4? You said 4 or 5?
3 or 4.
One of them maybe is free money or cheaper money. When you go to the bank, they will ask for what your ESG rating is. I've had a presentation from Campari a while ago, and they were very proud, saying that they got free money from the bank because they had a perfect ESG rating. And as well, why? Also, every bank that gives a loan to you, you come in their scope 3. So the scope 3 of banks are massive, because they're basically everywhere within their supply chain, if you call it a supply chain. And so cheaper money, let's put it like that.
Actually, it's money and then other advantages. Yeah? So.
I'll give you one. Enterprise value. That's the thing that CEOs think about all the time. So it's your EBITDA times your multiple. Your multiple is going to be greater if you're running a sustainable business. No one wants to buy a business that's going to not be a business in 10, 15 years' time.
Maybe one story. I spent a time with my CEO, and I also told him that, look, sustainability is saving money. It's the ultimate game is to invest to save money. You're going to use less energy. You're going to use less water. You're going to use less of everything. So it's not about money. There is always a step when every business we do is to invest, and now it's about investing time and effort to get a long-term return. So, and he was happy with the story basically. But we're also a family-owned-based company, so it's maybe also easier to convince a family base. But I believe the argument for the banking is also the same.
I'm adding one more. So I'm going back again to traditional procurement work. So it is the advantage is here that you get absolute clear transparency about your supply base. So you will know in the end with who are your partners, with whom are you really doing business. And by the way, you don't want to get into the media, so at one day saying, oh, this company actually bought the stuff from the mine, which is on the banned list. And today, social media, this can be once and it's done forever. So I think this should be also one of the biggest arguments for your CEO when you deal with these stuff.
Last question, Gulsa.
Can you hear me? Okay. So we quite touch upon the external factors in the ESG, but I like to hear your opinion or ideas maybe how to build the ESG mindset in the company. Sibelco is a family-owned company. We have a very, strong board vision on this one. So, EXCO is really driving the ESG agenda together with all the functions, but still building that kind of mindset and putting in every functions, targets, and then, creating that different, kind of thinking. It's an issue. And I like to just, hear your opinion on that. What's your experience, if you have, or your ideas?
Shall I start? Yeah. So, from my experience, and it's not only with ESG, it's with many things in change. This is change management. Yeah? So it's really change management and getting your own people engaged. So to jump on your mission. Here it's really about storytelling. It's about authentic and real storytelling and touching the heart of the people and have empathetic relationship. This is the only way how we really get everybody on board with their, let's say, with their whole heart and intent. Because this is also what you want. You want to have employees who are following your mission and your let's say, reaching your goals with heart and engagement and passion. And this is the only way you get them. So storytelling and motivational speeches.
Yeah, so mine would be, it has to be led from the top, CEO down. If the CEO's not committed, don't expect the employees to be committed. So that's the first point. The second point is ESG and sustainability shouldn't be siloed. It's got to be across the organisation. It's everybody's job to think about it. If you engage the employees in the debate so they own the targets, then you'll have an organisation that thrives on that.
And from my side, two ideas work quite well in organization. One, it was I invited someone to talk about ESG, but with a passion, someone who touch, someone with charisma, a very good evangelist, within a company who really use the right word, work very well. This is for the people, let's say, in a company, in the state. And to create also a new state of mind, we ask all the young talent a survey and we ask them, what do you care about? We take the young talent in your company and you ask them, you make a survey and you went to the CEO and they all care about sustainability. So the people of tomorrow, the manager of tomorrow, if you want, the performing people in your organization care about. Then you become also a HR and the way to engage your employees within the sustainability.
Great.
Very important what you just said, and this thing with, again, motivational speeches and so on. It should be also somebody internally, so from inside the organization who is also running and driving this. People trust, so a person, the people trust already, and listening to this person. So.
Okay, last comment?
Yeah, is this one on? Okay, yeah. Maybe 3 concrete tips. Green champions in every team. I think I'm a firm believer of you get what you reward. So next to a financial figure, you should also reward CO2 or sustainability or whatever you want to choose to put the focus on. People work for what they get rewarded. And 3, hire the right people. Like in your future hiring decisions, I'm not saying fire the entire company, but in your future hiring decisions, make sure that you have the people on board that actually believe in this and that want to be this green champion, and that you might have like a team on the long term that only exists out of green champions or sustainable champions, whatever you want to call it.
But don't force everybody to become vegetarians. Huh?
All right, guys, we have to leave it there. There's a lot of emotion in here, so I think that's good topic for have continuous conversations. Thank you for the panel. Please, applause. Okay, so next up we have Khalid will be joining us if we're talking about ESG and have a digital approach there. Understood that Katrien couldn't make it. So Khalid, thank you for jumping in.